Chosen ones, the air was still when it began, so still that even the leaves on the oldest trees seemed to bow in reverence. You felt it before you heard it. A pulse deep within the marrow of your bones, as if the earth itself was knocking from beneath your feet. Then the sound. Not thunder, not wind. It was a voice, vast, layered, older than language. It was speaking in syllables you had never been taught, yet you knew them. The Anunnaki tongue. The sky above shifted into colors that have no place in the human spectrum. Hues the mind struggles to remember, even while seeing. Between them, shapes began to form. They were not clouds, but glyphs, symbols that vibrated in rhythm with your heartbeat. Each mark was like a key, unlocking something buried within your DNA. You remembered the stories, dismissed as myth by those too afraid to see the pattern. The Anunnaki, the Watchers, the architects of humankind's beginning. They said a time would come when the blood of the first ones would rise again, when the hidden strands in the human genome, the ones science calls junk, would begin to hum like strings in a forgotten instrument. Lightning without thunder danced across the horizon, illuminating fragments of something colossal above the clouds. The outline of a craft so immense it seemed to curve the sky itself. Your pulse quickened, not from fear, from recognition. You have always known you were being watched, but this was different. This was not surveillance, it was a summons. The voice grew clearer. It was not calling the masses. It was calling you. Every syllable carried a weight, a command written before time itself. The words carved themselves into the wind, into the vibration of the earth beneath your feet, into the rhythm of your breath. Then came the final sound, one that seemed to bend reality around it. A single tone that reached into your mind, not to deliver a message, but to awaken the one already hidden there. You knew in that moment that the warnings were not for them. They were for you, and what was coming had already begun to move. The desert was colder than you expected, and the moon sat heavy above the dunes, casting silver light across the ruins, half buried in sand. Your footsteps crunched over stone older than any kingdom. And there, in the hollow of what had once been a chamber, stood the tablet. It was not made of clay or stone. You knew, but something harder, something that refused to weather with time. The surface shimmered like obsidian, yet caught the light as if it breathed. You reached for it, and the air tightened around your hand. The silence was thick, not empty, but full, like the pause before thunder struck, the moment your skin met its surface. A pulse ran through your arm into your chest, and for a fraction of a heartbeat, the stars above seemed to blink out, replaced by constellations you did not recognize. Symbols aligned in perfect patterns, shifting with each breath you took. The tablet's carvings were alive, the grooves in its surface, glowing faintly gold threads, weaving in and out as if a hidden hand traced them. Even now, you could not read the language, and yet meaning poured into you. The way water fills an empty vessel. Images flooded your mind. Towers of light rising in oceans, now gone colossal figures, stepping across valleys as if they were streams. Voices that spoke without sound, telling of a lineage carefully hidden from the eyes of the world. You saw the hands that made this tablet long, slender, covered in a metallic sheen, not armor, not skin, but something in between these beings carved not to remember but to warn, Every line was a gate, every curve a key. The moonlight grew brighter, though no cloud had moved, and the shadows lengthened, not away from the tablet, but toward it, as if drawn into its glow. A wind began to swirl around you, warm despite the night, and carrying the faint scent of something sweet and metallic, like rain on ancient stone. Your reflection in the tablet's surface began to change, not distorted, but layered, another face over yours, eyes older than any lifetime. You remembered looking back at you, and in that silent gaze, you realized the tablet was not just speaking to you. It was remembering you, and it had been waiting for you to arrive. The tablet had been taken to a hidden chamber lit only by oil lamps, their flames bending toward it, as if drawn by a force older than the wind. Scholars whispered in half belief, half fear, afraid that reading it aloud might summon what the glyphs promised. No one could decipher the full script until one old linguist ran his fingers across the grooves, closed his eyes, and began to hum a melody, so haunting it silenced even the breathing in the room. It was not Sumerian in its purest form, but something woven into it, like a shadow between words. You listened, and the hum began to shape itself into a psalm, not of worship to a god unknown, but of remembrance of a shepherd who once walked among men, guiding them through storms and fire. The lines spoke of one who would be rejected, yet hold the authority of the heavens. The psalm told of a bloodline protected across millennia, until a certain star aligned with the earth and the keeper of the ancient code would awaken. The scholar stopped, his voice trembling, and his eyes wet with something deeper than tears. He turned to you without speaking, as if the rest of the words could not be given voice in this place, and instead pointed to a particular cluster of glyphs. They formed a cross, not the kind of empire or crusade, but the simple kind carved by those who remembered the Nazarene. And in that moment, you felt the air shift, as if the name of Yeshua had been whispered without sound. The oil flames flared, and the walls seemed to breathe. The psalm unfolded in your mind like a scroll, untouched for thousands of years. It spoke of skies bending to protect one bearer of the code of rivers, halting their flow at the crossing of their steps of kings, bowing without understanding why the melody lingered in your bones, each note carrying a weight too heavy for mortal words. As the last hum faded, a single grain of sand fell from the chamber ceiling, landing on the tablet's surface and igniting one final line that none had seen before. It glowed briefly, then faded, leaving only the shape of the cross in shadow. The room remained still, yet every soul inside knew the rest. Of the psalm had not yet been sung, and its final verse would not be found here. The wind carried a strange hum across the dunes that night, a tone so low it vibrated through your ribs and set your teeth on edge. The moon hung swollen and pale, casting the sand in a cold silver that made the desert look like an endless sea. You followed the sound, each step drawing you deeper into a place the maps claimed was empty, until the ground beneath your feet shifted the grains of sand, sliding away to reveal an outline carved into the bedrock. The shape was a perfect ring, its edges too precise to be the work of erosion. The stone was etched with markings that pulsed faintly, as if lit from within. You knelt, running your hand across the surface, and felt heat not from the sun, but from something live deep beneath it. A gust of wind spiraled into the center, and the sand inside the ring began to sink in, a slow, deliberate spiral, revealing stairs that descended into darkness. You stepped down each stair, echoing with a metallic ring that did not belong to stone. The air grew warmer and heavier as you went deeper, until the walls began to glow with threads of blue light, twisting like veins of molten glass. Then, the tunnel opened into a chamber so vast the ceiling disappeared into shadow. At its center stood an archway made of a material like liquid metal, frozen mid-motion. Its surface rippled, though it stood perfectly still. Symbols, like those from the tablet, lined the arch, but here they were, brighter, sharper, their glow matching the rhythm of your heartbeat as you stepped closer. The hum grew into a resonance that filled your skull and pressed behind your eyes. The air before the arch shimmered as if you were staring through heat rising from asphalt. Shapes began to move in the distortion. Tall figures cloaked in shadow, their faces obscured by light itself. One of them raised a hand in greeting or warning. You could not tell, and the space within the arch deepened, becoming not black but infinite. The hum, now a chorus, pulling at your very blood, as if something within it recognized you. The air shifted. The sand above groaned, and you knew the gate was not simply opening, it was answering. The chamber walls seemed to draw closer as the symbols along the arch flared brighter, each one pulsing in perfect time with the beating of your heart. The figures beyond the shimmer remained still, as though waiting for you to cross. But before you could step forward, the glow from the symbols began to twist into new shapes, forming lines of script across the inner curve of the gate. You did not know the language yet. The meaning settled into your mind like a memory. You had never lived. It was a verse not of poetry for beauty, but of precision for truth. It spoke of one who would carry the seed of two worlds, flesh born of earth, yet breath drawn from the stars, the bloodline marked by an ancient covenant, sealed before the fall of the first cities. The verse described a sign that would confirm the bearer when the constellations turned and a certain star hung low over the horizon. The same alignment carved into the oldest tablets and whispered in forbidden halls. Your breath caught as you saw an embedded symbol appear at the verse's end. It was not Sumerian, not Anunnaki, but older. Still, a simple cross formed from 4 lines intersecting perfectly at the center. No embellishment, no crown of empire, just the kind carved in secret by those who remembered Yeshua. The resonance in the air deepened the hum, becoming almost like a voice without words. And for a moment, you felt the verse not as prophecy, but as identity. The blood in your veins seemed to heat your vision, narrowed until the arch and its symbols were all you could see. Then you heard it, a faint echo of the psalm from the Sumerian script, but here it was fuller, stronger, as if the missing verses had been hidden inside your very cells. The lines spoke of one who would bridge the heavens and the earth, whose steps would awaken the gates, and whose presence would cause the watchers to tremble. The light in the arch dimmed just enough for the shadowed figures to shift. One stepped forward, and the shimmer bent around them, the verse still glowing behind their form. The air between you felt like the space between lightning and thunder, full of inevitability. And just as the figure's face began to emerge, the chamber trembled, as if the gate itself resisted what was about to pass through. The city was wrapped in a haze of heat when you found him, an old man with eyes like fragments of night sky sitting alone on the balcony of an abandoned observatory. His telescope aimed not at the stars, but at the horizon where the sun was sinking in a molten red glow. He did not look at you when you approached, only tightened his grip on the brass tube as if it were the last thread holding him to this world. He spoke without greeting, his voice dry from hours of silence, telling you that some things were never meant for the public. Sky charts that showed patterns no human should have recognized, constellations bending and reforming into shapes that matched the glyphs on the tablet. His fingers trembled as he described the moment he traced the alignment forward in time and found it converging on a single date and a single set of coordinates. When he showed you his notes, the pages were smudged from where he had tried to burn them, yet could not bring himself to finish the act. The drawings showed the desert ring, the stargate beneath it, and a beam of light descending from a cluster in Orion, not striking the Earth at random, but aligning perfectly with a single point on the surface. That point was where you stood now. He admitted the alignment would not last long, perhaps minutes, perhaps only seconds. And when it came, the gate would not merely open, it would anchor what lay beyond his eyes, darted toward the telescope. And he asked if you had ever felt the sky watching you. You answered without words, and he nodded, as if he had known all along. The observatory creaked in the evening wind, the air smelling faintly of copper and dust. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper, telling you that the alignment was already beginning faster than he had predicted. The coordinates were locked, not by machines, but by something older. And his final words were that the heavens did not need permission to call someone home. He turned back to the telescope, peering through the lens, his body going still, the muscles in his jaw tightening, as if he were staring at something too vast to comprehend. You moved to his side, and when you looked through the glass, the sky was no longer where it should be. The desert wind was heavy with heat when you arrived at the ancient ziggurat, its steps rising like the bones of a sleeping giant. The structure cast a long shadow across the sand, but as the sun shifted, you saw it bend unnaturally, stretching far beyond the base until it formed a perfect cross etched in darkness. The sight pulled at something deep inside you, not with fear, but with the same recognition you had felt before, when the psalm spoke of Yeshua. You climbed the weathered steps, each one warm beneath your hands. The air grew denser, the higher you ascended, until the horizon itself seemed to narrow around the monument. At the top, the flat platform was ringed with stone pillars, each one carved with symbols matching those on the tablet and the gate below. But here, the lines were sharper, as if untouched by time. In the center lay a shallow basin filled not with water, but with fine black sand that shimmered faintly in the light. As you stepped closer, the wind stilled the shadow of the cross below, pulsing once as if it were alive. A memory, not yours but ancient, pressed into your thoughts. A scene of figures in robes, standing in this very place, their faces lit by firelight, one of them holding a smaller tablet carved with the same cross. Now in the shadow, their voices chanted words you could not understand, yet their meaning was clear. They were invoking the one who bridged heaven and earth, the same figure whose name had been hidden in forbidden verses. The shadow grew darker, its edges sharpening until it felt as though you could step into it. The sand in the basin began to shift, forming ripples that matched the hum you had heard at the Stargate. The pillars around you vibrated with a low resonance, the sound crawling into your bones. The cross in the shadow began to glow faintly, as if lit from beneath the earth, and the air tasted of metal and rain. Your vision blurred the platform, tilting though you had not moved, and in that moment, the shadow seemed to rise, lifting from the ground like smoke, caught in reverse. Every grain of black sand in the basin leapt upward. Following it, and in the space between the pillars, something began to take shape. Night had just taken the horizon when the first streak of light tore across the sky. It was not a meteor. Its path was deliberate, unbroken from the far edge of the heavens to the desert floor. The air cracked with a sound that was not thunder, but something deeper, as if the fabric between worlds had split. You followed the light to where it had struck a ridge of pale stone, the sand still trembling beneath your feet. The glow lingered long after impact, illuminating the ridge in an otherworldly silver. When you climbed to the crest, you saw it lying there, not shattered or broken, but kneeling, as if it had landed with intention. The figure was tall, its form almost human, but framed in an aura that blurred the lines of flesh and light. The eyes opened slowly, revealing irises like fragments of the night sky dotted with constellations that shifted as they watched you. It spoke without moving, its lips, the words forming directly in your mind. The voice carried no accent, no origin, only the weight of truth. It told you that the alignment was no accident, that the gates had begun to stir, because the one who matched the bloodline code was now in place. It called you by a name you did not know, yet felt like it had always been yours. The messenger rose, and as it did, the sand around its feet swirled into patterns that mirrored the symbols from the tablet, each glowing briefly before fading into the wind. It pointed toward the ziggurat, its gaze never leaving yours, and in the sky behind it, you saw the Orion belt burning brighter than any other constellation, the 3 stars pulsing in perfect rhythm with your heartbeat. The air grew colder, a strange mist coiling around the ridge, though the desert had no water. The messenger stepped closer, placing a hand against your chest, and for a moment the world dissolved. You stood not on sand, but in a place of endless light, where a vast arch stretched across the horizon. Beyond it, figures watched, silent and still, their faces hidden, yet their presence undeniable. Then the ridge returned beneath your feet, the messenger lowering its hand, the glow around it dimming. It looked to the stars once more, as if listening to a call beyond your hearing, and in the next breath, its form began to dissolve into the night sky, leaving only the hum. The temple was buried beneath centuries of dust, its entrance hidden behind a wall of collapsed stone. The air inside was dry but heavy, carrying the scent of something metallic. You descended a narrow passage lit only by the faint blue glow of veins running through the rock, each step echoing into a silence that seemed to press in from every side. The passage opened into a vast chamber lined with columns carved in the likeness of beings whose faces were worn smooth by time. At the center stood a vault door, taller than 3 men, wide and seamless. Except for the seal embedded at its heart, the seal was circular, its surface engraved with layers of symbols spiraling inward, and at the very center, a shape unmistakable. A cross, simple and unadorned, like those hidden in the oldest psalms. A whisper moved through the chamber, though no mouth spoke. It was the same echo you had felt in the ziggurat's shadow, the name of Yeshua carried in a tongue too ancient for human memory. As you approached the seal, the air thickened, the glow from the rock veins pulsing faster, like a heartbeat. The symbols began to shift, rearranging themselves into an order that matched the verse from the bloodline code. The vault trembled, dust falling from the columns in thin streams. The seal cracked along its edges, a single line of light spilling out into the chamber. The sound it made was not the grind of stone, but the tearing of something far more fragile. The crack widened, the light growing so bright you had to raise your hand to shield your eyes. The columns vibrated with a deep resonance, each tone striking a chord in your chest until it felt as though your own heartbeat was part of the mechanism. The cross at the center glowed brighter than the rest, and with a final pulse, it split into 4 equal shards that spun away and dissolved into the air. The vault door began to open, not swinging, but dissolving into a mist of silver that curled upward and vanished. The chamber beyond was dark, yet alive with a faint sound like thousands of voices speaking in unison. Too far away to understand, the air that poured out was warm, carrying the scent of rain on stone, and something else, the feeling of a threshold. You were not meant to cross alone. The night sky above the temple was wrong. Stars did not twinkle. They moved, sliding into new positions with the precision of gears in a great clock. The familiar patterns unraveled the Orion belt, stretching apart while other constellations bent inward, forming shapes you had only seen on the tablet and in the sand at the Stargate. Each shift was silent, yet you could feel the weight of it pressing against your skin, as if the heavens themselves leaned closer to see you. The wind had died completely, leaving the air unnaturally still. The vault behind you hummed faintly, as if in answer to whatever was happening. Above you, stepped into the open, and the cold light from the stars fell directly on you, sharper than moonlight, carrying a subtle warmth like sunlight through ice. Your breath came in slow, even pulls without your willing it, and each exhale seemed to send a ripple into the space between earth and sky. You could feel the alignment taking form, threads of light connecting the stars above into a vast network. A map, not of places, but of moments. Each thread pulsed, and you knew instinctively they were marking times when the Watchers had intervened. Before your presence, here was another point in that map, and the lines converged not on the temple, not on the ziggurat, but on you, somewhere in that shifting expanse. A single star flared brighter than the rest, low on the horizon, its light steady and unblinking. The hum in your chest deepened, matching the rhythm from the psalm. The Sumerian verse had awakened, the night felt full, as if the space between the stars was alive and aware. Your shadow stretched unnaturally long across the stone, its edges bending upward toward the source of the light. You glanced down and saw it was no longer just your shadow. Other shapes overlapped it, faint outlines of figures standing in the same place as you, but taller, broader, their forms flickering as though caught between worlds. The air shimmered around them, and you realized the constellation shift was not only in the sky, it was in the space around you, bending light, time, and memory into a single point, the point where the next step could not be taken back. The star on the horizon swelled until it was no longer a point of light, but a sphere, burning with a steady crimson glow. The rest of the constellations held still as if the entire sky had frozen to watch its ascent. The air thickened, each breath heavy with the scent of rain. Though no cloud had formed above the ground beneath you, vibrated not with the rumble of earth, but with the low, unbroken tone of something vast and alive. From the vault behind you, a faint stream of silver mist slipped into the open air. curling upward toward the red star. The figures in your overlapping shadow grew sharper, their features still hidden, yet their presence undeniable. They faced the star with you, as if bearing witness to something written long before the first city rose from dust. The hum in your chest deepened into a rhythm like a heartbeat older than the earth itself. Then the name came not spoken, but etched into your mind with such clarity, it felt carved in light. The same name hidden in the psalm, the one whispered in the ziggurat's shadow and carried on the seal in the vault. A name that in every tongue returned to Yeshua. The moment it struck your thoughts, the crimson light pulsed, sending a wave across the sky, the stars nearest it dimming as though bowing in reverence. The temperature dropped, the wind returning in a single, slow breath that circled the temple and died. The mist from the vault began to coil faster, drawn into an invisible thread that connected you to the star. The figures in your shadow moved in unison. One. Stepping forward until their form overlapped yours perfectly. For an instant, you felt the weight of two beings inside. One frame, the knowledge of lifetimes layered over your own. The red star flickered once, twice, then flared brighter, its glow staining the edges of the horizon as if dawn were breaking from the wrong direction. The hum reached a pitch that threatened to tear the air itself apart, and the constellations around it shifted one last time, forming a pattern you recognized but could not name. Your heart pounded in time with the pulse of the star, and you knew the next beat would not belong to this world.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.